The first time Lauren found Megan on the bathroom floor, it wasn't the pills that terrified her. It was the silence. The kind of silence that felt practiced, like she'd rehearsed it. Lauren hadn't planned to move in with Megan. It wasn't a decision, it was a reflex. When someone you love sends a 2 a.m. text that simply says, "I don't think I can do this anymore," you don't wait for permission. You pack a bag, you show up. And that's what Lauren did. Megan hadn't opened the door when she arrived. She didn't need to. The spare key was still under the cracked ceramic frog by the porch. Lauren used it and stepped into a home that smelled like stale coffee and unopened grief. Megan had once been full of life, a writer with sharp wit, unapologetic eyeliner, and playlists that could make you cry or dance depending on the hour. But after her mother's sudden death, something in her went dark. Not all at once, more like a slow extinguishing, light bulb by light bulb. By the time Lauren moved in, only shadows remained. She didn't tell anyone, not Megan's sister Danielle, who barely visited, not Megan's old college friends who had stopped calling, and certainly not Nathan, the charming ex who ghosted just before the funeral. It wasn't for credit, it was for Megan. Lauren took unpaid leave from her job at the clinic. She turned Megan's living room into a soft space, blankets, white noise, tea instead of alcohol. She cooked small meals and left them by the door. She kept all the sharp objects hidden. Some days, Megan didn't speak, just nodded, or didn't. Other days, she talked in fragments, about missing time, about how guilt tasted like copper, about how the quiet was too loud. Lauren listened. That was her job. And then, things began to shift. Subtle signs: Megan sitting on the couch instead of her bed, drinking tea, not wine, asking for help organizing her bills, laughing once, faintly, at a rerun of a sitcom they used to watch. Lauren felt hope. Not fireworks, but a flicker, enough to stay. She started helping with finances, gently, respectfully. Megan was behind on utilities, the mortgage. Lauren used her own savings to cover the gaps, never mentioning it. She kept receipts, kept things honest, because that's what you do when someone can't trust themselves. You become trustworthy enough for both of you. But still, Megan's sister Danielle hovered like a fog. She visited once, unannounced. Clean clothes, a blazer, a stiff hug. She looked around the house, then at Lauren. "You're still here?" she asked, like Lauren was a stain. Lauren nodded. "She needs someone." Danielle scoffed. "She needs a psychiatrist, not a shadow." It hurt, but Lauren didn't argue. She knew Danielle only showed up when it was convenient or when she needed access to their parents' estate paperwork, still frozen in probate. Still, Megan had once whispered, "Don't tell her how bad it gets. She makes me feel like I'm faking." So Lauren stayed quiet. She stayed through the panic attacks, through the night terrors, through the time Megan sobbed because she couldn't remember the last thing she wrote. But then, the silence changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy, ominous. Megan began withdrawing again, but not like before. This time, she avoided eye contact. Her phone was always turned face down. She'd pause when Lauren entered the room, as if she'd been caught doing something she didn't want seen. Lauren brushed it off. Maybe it was part of healing, or fear of relapse. Maybe Megan just needed space. Until one morning, she found the front door ajar. Megan was gone. No note, no call. She searched hospitals, called the police, drove to Megan's favorite bench at the park near the library. Nothing. She came home to find Danielle standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, police officers behind her. "What's going on?" Lauren asked. Danielle's voice was ice. "Megan is in the hospital. She had a breakdown. She told them you stole from her, manipulated her, took control of her accounts." Lauren blinked. "What?" One of the officers stepped forward. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us and answer a few questions." Lauren couldn't move. Megan said what? She thought of the groceries, the quiet nights on the floor, the bills she paid without asking for thanks, the long silent hours spent holding someone else's pain so it wouldn't kill them. And now, she was being accused of the very thing she had sacrificed to prevent. Lauren looked down at her hands. They were shaking. She saved her from drowning. And now, she was being dragged under by the same hand she had held above water.
They say no good deed goes unpunished, but they never say what it feels like when the punishment comes from the person you protected. Lauren sat in the small, sterile room at the precinct, fingers clasped so tightly they'd gone numb. The officer across from her had a practiced neutrality, the kind that stripped everything human from the space. "Ms. Garrett," he began, "we're trying to understand your relationship with Ms. Harper. From what we've been told, you'd been living in her home for nearly 3 months?" Lauren nodded. "She wasn't safe to be alone." "And during that time," he continued, flipping through a file, "you had access to her phone, her bank accounts, her schedule, her medication?" "I didn't take anything without her permission," Lauren said firmly. "She asked me to help." He raised an eyebrow. "You handled her finances?" "She couldn't open her mail, couldn't pay her bills. I stepped in. I kept records you can check." "And the money that was transferred from her savings to your account?" Lauren blinked. "That was to reimburse groceries, gas, a few utilities. We agreed. She even signed." She stopped. Had Megan signed anything? No. Everything had been verbal, trust-based. Because that's what friends do when one of them is falling apart. The officer leaned back. "Megan's sister claims you isolated her, that you prevented Megan from seeing family, that you controlled her social life and used her mental state to manipulate her." Lauren felt like the floor had opened beneath her. "She told you that?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "She told the ER nurse, the psych intake staff, and now her attorney." Attorney. That word hit harder than the rest. Lauren wasn't just being questioned, she was being accused. She left the station shaken, but not charged. Yet. Pending investigation, they said. She drove home in silence. Megan's house, still hers for now, felt like a crime scene she hadn't meant to create. Every corner whispered betrayal. Every photo on the fridge now looked like evidence. The next day, her phone lit up with a text from a mutual friend, Jenna. "Hey, just heard about Megan. I can't believe what you did." She didn't reply. What could she say? Her inbox flooded. People unfollowed her. Whispers turned into concrete judgments. Lauren wasn't just the friend who disappeared into Megan's crisis. She had become the villain in someone else's story. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she pulled out her journal. She began writing down everything. Dates, conversations, receipts. The night Megan had a panic attack and begged her not to call Danielle. The morning Megan asked her to transfer $200 to cover a missed mortgage payment. The time she threw away the pills only to have Megan dig through the trash 3 hours later. None of it looked heroic on paper. All of it looked suspicious out of context. The next morning she got a call from a blocked number. She answered. Silence. Then a breath. Then Megan's voice. Soft, flat, tired. Lauren? Lauren sat up. Megan, what is going on? I didn't want it to go this far. You told them I manipulated you. Megan exhaled. I was scared. I told Danielle I didn't know where the money went. She assumed things. I didn't correct her. I sorry. You didn't correct her? I couldn't. She's handling my power of attorney now. She said you were making decisions I couldn't consent to. I was keeping you alive, Megan. Silence again. Then Megan whispered, I know. And she hung up. Lauren stared at the phone for a long time, heart hollowing. This wasn't a mistake. This was survival for Megan. She had chosen to be the victim and Lauren the sacrifice. Because sometimes when someone drowns, they reach for whoever is closest, even if that person came to save them. She gave everything to help her friend breathe again, and now she was suffocating under the weight of that gift. You never think someone you loved will choose silence over truth. But silence is just another kind of weapon, one that cuts without ever being raised. The official notice came 3 days later. An envelope slid under Lauren's door, marked from the county clerk's office. Inside, a restraining order, filed on behalf of Megan Harper. The terms were strict: no contact, no proximity, no attempts to interfere with Megan's medical or legal decisions. It was like being erased from someone's life by legal decree. Lauren stared at the paper for nearly an hour. It didn't just ban her from Megan's home. It banned her from the truth, from context, from defending herself in the only space that mattered, Megan's memory of what they had been. Later that afternoon, her landlord knocked. Sorry, Lauren, he said, avoiding eye contact. I need the keys. Megan's sister came by with court documents. House is being reclaimed. She wanted to scream. She wanted to claw at the walls. Instead, she handed over the keys with a numb nod. By nightfall, she was sleeping on a friend's couch, or trying to. Lauren scrolled through old texts, old photos, proof, maybe, of something real, but even the pictures mocked her. 2 friends laughing, cooking, watching reruns, smiling with no idea how temporary it all was. She posted nothing, said nothing online. But the internet didn't care. Comments began to appear on her old posts. Wow, never thought you were that kind of person. You stole from someone who trusted you. Shame. One message stood out, private, from Nathan, Megan's ex. Heard what happened. Sorry, but honestly, that girl's always been a mess. You should have known better. Lauren stared at it, then deleted it, because even pity felt like poison. She called a lawyer. A public defender assigned to her case advised patience. There's no criminal charge yet, but her sister's trying to push for elder abuse. Mental incapacitation is hard to fight if there's documented psychiatric history. Lauren's laugh was bitter. So because she was sick, I'm guilty of helping? She was vulnerable, he replied, tone clipped. That makes everything you did questionable. Lauren hung up. That night she went back to the house, stood across the street. It was lit from inside, warm, soft. Someone was playing music. Danielle was there. Megan, too. She saw her shadow pass in front of the window. She looked
Okay. Stable. Not the hollowed-out woman Lauren had cared for. For a moment, Lauren felt relief. Then rage. She'd been discarded like a nurse whose shift had ended. No acknowledgement, no gratitude, no truth, just accusations and silence. That night, she opened a new document on her laptop. She began to write, "This is what really happened." She didn't know if she'd publish it, didn't know if anyone would believe her, but writing gave her back a sliver of control. And right now, control was all she had. They believed her because she was broken, but no one asked who cleaned up the pieces and what it cost to do so.
When loyalty is put on trial, there's no jury that sees the nights you stayed awake, only the evidence they're told to look for. The hearing wasn't in a courtroom. It was in a gray government office with low ceilings, fluorescent lights, and folding chairs, the kind of place where real pain is reduced to paperwork. Lauren sat alone, her lawyer beside her, a man with too many cases and not enough interest. Danielle entered confidently, briefcase in hand, heels clicking like punctuation marks on the tiled floor. Behind her was Megan, thinner, paler, but alert, controlled. She wouldn't meet Lauren's eyes. The room fell quiet as the hearing officer, a woman named Judge Ramirez, began reading from the file. Megan had filed a civil claim accusing Lauren of overstepping medical boundaries, exerting undue emotional influence, and allegedly transferring funds without full cognitive consent. Lauren wanted to laugh. Instead, she sat still, hands clenched under the table. Danielle spoke first. She painted a portrait of her sister's fragility, how Megan had been in emotional freefall, how she had cried for help but been isolated by someone who took over every aspect of her life. She wasn't living. She was being managed, quietly, subtly, but completely. Then came the photos. Screenshots of Lauren's access to Megan's banking app, images of grocery receipts, notes scribbled on medication logs, evidence twisted into implication. And finally, Megan's testimony. She didn't accuse Lauren directly. She said things like, "I was confused. I didn't know what was happening. I trusted her too much." Each sentence was a needle. Lauren had expected lies, but not this. Not the soft betrayal of half-truths designed to sound like memory. Her lawyer barely defended her, just repeated, "There's no direct evidence of financial exploitation." When it was Lauren's turn to speak, her voice cracked. "I never took advantage of her. I left my job to help. I never asked for anything in return. I used my own money to pay bills she couldn't face." "Do you have proof of that?" Ramirez asked. Lauren hesitated. "No, not formal proof, just receipts and text messages, conversations." "And no written agreement?" "No. She was in crisis. I didn't ask her to sign contracts." Ramirez scribbled something down, the kind of note that seals fates. Megan finally looked at her. There was something in her eyes, not regret, not cruelty. Fear. Fear of losing control again. And Lauren understood suddenly that this was never about guilt or innocence. It was about protection, survival. Megan needed a story in which she hadn't needed saving, and Lauren, too close, too full of memory, was a threat to that fiction. The hearing ended without resolution. The case was deferred for further review, but Lauren knew what that meant. Stalled indefinitely. No formal charges, no vindication either. Just limbo. Afterward, in the parking lot, Danielle approached her. "You should have known your place," she said.
Lauren turned slowly. "My place?" she asked, voice low. Danielle didn't blink. "You were just a stopgap. People like Megan need professionals, not emotional liabilities pretending to be heroes." She stared at her. She wanted to scream, to slap her, to demand where Danielle had been when Megan stopped eating, when she begged not to be left alone. But she said nothing, because some truths don't need to be shouted. They just need to be carried, like scars that no one sees, but never fully fade. That night, Lauren packed what little she had left into a storage unit. No job, no home, a reputation fractured beyond repair. But also no guilt, because she knew what she did. She lived the nights, held the hands, fed the silence, and no courtroom, real or imagined, could take that away from her. They tried to convict her of caring too much, but the real sentence was learning that not all love is meant to be remembered kindly. There are truths you never get to say out loud, because the people who need to hear them have already rewritten the story without you. Weeks passed. Lauren drifted through them like someone who had lost her own shape. Days had no beginning, only interruptions. Emails unanswered, messages ignored, job applications that seemed to vanish into a void. The world didn't care that she was innocent, because the accusation alone had already painted her in permanent ink. Still, she kept writing. Not for anyone else, just for herself. She documented every conversation, every moment she could recall. She tried to pin her memory down like butterflies, fragile, brilliant, always threatening to escape. And then one evening, she received an email from Megan Harper. Subject, "I owe you the truth." She froze before opening it. Inside were 4 sentences. "I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know how to explain what was happening inside me. Danielle saw weakness and turned it into strategy. I was too tired to stop her." No apology, no clarification, just that. She read it again and again. It didn't exonerate her, didn't clear her name, but it cracked the silence, just enough to let in air. She responded with a single question. "Then why did you stay quiet?" No reply came, but the read receipt confirmed Megan saw it. The silence that followed wasn't empty this time. It was chosen. Megan had made peace with the version of herself that didn't owe Lauren anything more, and Lauren, for the first time, felt the smallest thread of release. She realized something painful, something final. Megan had never lied maliciously. She had lied to survive, because that's what trauma does. It reshapes memory, turns help into control, turns saviors into threats. And sometimes the person you rescue resents you for reminding them they needed rescuing at all. Lauren printed the email and folded it into the back of her journal, not as proof, as testimony, a silent witness that she hadn't imagined at all. She started rebuilding, slowly, quietly. She found work at a small community clinic under a different county, no questions asked. She rented a studio apartment, bare walls, secondhand furniture, no trace of the woman who once emptied herself into someone else's pain. But even then, the past hovered. Sometimes she'd see someone who looked like Megan at the grocery store and feel her pulse spike. Sometimes she'd dream about the days before the unraveling, laughter on rainy afternoons, shared coffee, Megan's head on her shoulder while the TV played in the background. Those were real too. No accusation could erase that. One night, Lauren walked past a bookstore and saw Megan's name on the cover of a new collection, "The Year I Almost Vanished." a memoir. She picked it up, flipped through pages. Half of it was poetry, the other half fragmented prose, memories blurred into metaphor. And one passage stood out. There was someone who stayed longer than they should have, someone who gave more than I could repay. I don't say her name, because this isn't her story, but I carry her in the quiet, always. Lauren closed the book gently, not with anger, not with grief, but with something closer to peace. She hadn't been erased, she had been buried. But even buried things leave roots. And sometimes, silence is its own kind of recognition. Some wounds don't close with answers. They close when you stop waiting for one. Forgiveness didn't arrive like a lightning strike. There was no moment of sudden release, no tearful breakdown, no grand epiphany. It arrived quietly, in pieces, like sunlight seeping through curtains after a night that felt endless. Lauren stopped checking her email, stopped rereading Megan's message, stopped waiting for a second letter that would never come. Instead, she started noticing the small things, how her hands no longer trembled while making tea, how she could sit in silence without feeling it was punishment, how her reflection no longer looked like a question. She wasn't whole, but she was becoming. The clinic job grounded her, not because it was glamorous, but because it was real. People came in broken, yes, but no one pretended to be anything else. No masks, no half-truths wrapped in politeness. And slowly, Lauren began to trust again. Not others. That would take time. She began to trust herself. That she could survive betrayal. That she could be good, even if someone else painted her as the villain. That she didn't need to be remembered by Megan in order to be valid. One evening, after work, she walked by the bookstore again. Megan's book was still on the shelf, second print edition. She didn't stop. She didn't need to. Forgiveness had already happened, not for Megan, but for herself. Because holding on to the ache had become its own kind of imprisonment. And letting go wasn't a gift to Megan. It was a rescue mission for the one person Lauren had forgotten to save during it all, herself. She threw away the folder with the old receipts, donated the journal, deleted the saved text messages, not to erase what happened, but to end her job as its archivist. What Megan had done or failed to do no longer needed to be processed. It had already been lived, and Lauren had paid enough rent in someone else's story. Now it was time to write her own, the kind that didn't begin with trauma, the kind that didn't end in courtroom shadows, a life with no audience, no apologies, no permission, just freedom. Not every story ends in justice. Some end in a quiet decision to stop chasing the person who left you bleeding and start choosing the person who finally stopped apologizing for surviving. Some betrayals leave scars, others leave silence, and the deepest ones are the ones no one else believes. Lauren didn't need an apology to heal. She needed to walk away, not from Megan, but from the part of herself that believed she had to be broken to be good. If this story struck a nerve, if you've ever been the one who stayed too long, who gave too much, who held someone up while they slowly let go of you, this story was for you. Leave a comment below. Have you ever been blamed for trying to save someone who didn't want saving? Let your voice be heard. Your story might help someone else feel less invisible. Like this video if you believe truth doesn't always come with justice. Subscribe for more stories like this. Stories where the lines between loyalty and self-destruction are heartbreakingly thin. We don't chase happy endings. We chase emotional honesty. And here, your pain has a place.